All right, so this week, here we go. We have our supplementable, pardon the cough, stuff, chapters 4, 5, and 6 to look through on the cookbook. I highly suggest you go through these videos. Personally, I think the videos give you a much better handle, and I'm going to walk you through tonight installing the server and stuff on your computer so you can play with the code a little better, because I'm thinking a lot of people didn't, and that'll help you with this basic operators list here. It'll help you not only put the code together, but it'll help you run it so you can see, oh, look at that, it works. So we'll do that, but this is this week. And then last week's is the one that has the section where you have the how to install the local server for PHP. So video 1 is just basically a rundown of your I say good day, madam. You spelled madam wrong, but that's okay. Nazi grammar is grammar Nazi is grammar Nazi. Anyway, so let's walk through that video, and I highly suggest that you follow along and do as we talk about it. Thank you, Gwen. Thank you. I love it. So I highly suggest that you do that. You also have your PHP tools that you can play with here, but this gives you a nice way that you can play with it on your computer, and it works really well. And I've had some compliments on how this works. So you guys ready to start this one up, and we can do that? We can watch it together and start and stop and do that. Sound good? All right. Some people are paying attention.
So in order to set up a website,
I have it open in another screen, and I want to be able to have assignments open, so we'll leave that up. Let's go back here. Okay, so the server, the local server thing that we're going to be using is called XAMPP.
So in order to set up a website,
you guys hear that okay?
We have to install what is called a local server. And there's a lot of different software out there on the internet which you can get in order to install a local server on your computer. I do know that some people are a little bit scared when it comes to installing a server on your computer. And I just want to point out that there's nothing to be scared of. Everything is going to be fine, and you're not going to install any sort of viruses, anything. Setting up a server is something that is actually quite easy to do, and anyone that does websites do it quite frequently. So it's not something that new people should be scared of doing. It's something that takes a couple of minutes to do, and then you have something running on the computer. So when it comes to installing a server, there's many different servers you can choose from. You have LAMP, VAMP, XAMPP, LIMP. Many different kinds of servers. I did also hear about something called Docker from one of my subscribers in the last video. So it's just interesting to see that there's so many different ways to do it. What we're going to use, however, is a server called XAMPP. And the argument I have for using XAMPP is that it's easy to set up, and it's the one I've been using for many years. I'm just really comfortable using XAMPP. So going inside your computer, you can see that we have this website here that I just found called apachefriends.org. I'll go ahead and leave a link to it so you can actually see it on screen here. Basically, this is just going to be a piece of software that you're going to download that we're going to start, and then it's going to run our server on our computer. This means that we can actually run a website that is using PHP on our computer without having to upload our website. Okay, so the link for this is in the, when you do the more thing, it's right there, the XAMPP right there is how you download that. Make sure it's for whatever version of Windows or whatever it is you can use. To the internet, so this makes it very easy to just work on our website offline on our computer, just like if we were to just make a HTML website. As you can see, we have a couple of different versions we can install in here. We have for Windows, Linux, and Mac. And you can also see what version we're going to install. In this case, this is going to be released 8.2.0. which is the PHP version that we're going to run on this server here. So once you figured out what operating system you're sitting on, I bet you probably know already. We're going to go and click the button for that one. So I'm going to click Windows. Then it's going to install the program for you. And if it doesn't, you're just going to go and click up here where it says click here. Then we're going to accept the privacy pop-up, and then we're just going to go ahead and download the latest version, which is 8.2.0. So we have the latest version.
Now, when I did this, it did not do this to me. It just downloaded it right away. So don't be surprised if when you click on it, it just goes boom and dumps it in there.
Version of PHP here. So we're going to go ahead and download it. Now, once you have it downloaded, you just double click it so we can make sure to install it on our computer. And it is important that you take note of where exactly you are installing it, since we will have to go in and do a couple of changes to it. Now, if you do get a pop-up like this, don't worry too much about it, since this is only going to be relevant.
I did, and it didn't matter. I just click OK and take the defaults.
And if we were to install this inside our program files, inside our main drive. So with that, I'm just going to click OK. And then we're going to choose where we want to install this program. So we're going to make sure all these are ticked on. And then I'm going to click Next. Then I'm going to select where I want to install this. Now, as you can see, I have it inside my C drive, but not inside my program files. So I can just go ahead and install it directly on the C drive. So I'm just going to.
I highly suggest you do exactly like he's got it here. Just leave it in your C drive.
I'm going to do that. Click Next. Then I'm going to choose a language. In this case, it's going to be English. And then we can just go ahead and make it set up our program on our computer. It's just going to unpack and install. Now, if you do insist that you want to install this inside your program files, then I do have a link in the description where you can go in and actually make sure there's no warnings popping up when you try to run this program inside the program files. But like I said, if you just install it directly inside the C drive like I did here, we're not going to have any sort of issues. Now, once you have it installed, it's going to ask if you want to start the control panel now, or if you want to wait it later. But now let's just go ahead and not do that, because I do want to show where exactly this is installed. So you can just open it up from inside the computer. So with that, I'm going to click Finish. And then you're going to go into where you installed XAMPP, which is inside, in my case, the C drive. So I'm going to go into this PC, inside my C drive. Then I'm going to go down to the bottom here, and then you can see I have XAMPP. Inside the XAMPP folder, we're going to have the actual server files, which means that we can scroll down to the bottom and actually run this control panel that we were just asked about. So we can just go and click the xampp-control.exe, open it up, and then you can see we have a little software in here. Now, the important thing for you to know about in here is that we have two services that we need in order to actually get PHP working. One is going to be the Apache server, which is the one that we need in order to actually run PHP. And the second one is the MySQL server, which is used in order to get access to our database. So what I can do is I can start these two, and then you can see we have them running. Another tip that I have for you is to make sure that you go down and actually dock this at the bottom. Since this is the program, you're going to have to start everything.
Yeah, go ahead and pin it to your taskbar. Let me tell you, it makes it much easier.
Every single time you need to start working on your website, this means that we need to go down and actually dock it or pin it to a taskbar to have easy access to it next time. With this running, we now need to set up our website inside this server here, which is very easy to do. So we're going to go back inside our folder where we have XAMPP installed, and then you're going to go up to the top here. Then you're going to go inside the folder called htdocs. Now in here, you're going to find a bunch of files, and these are just mainly to welcome you into the XAMPP software. So if I were to go inside my browser here, and inside the URL, I'm going to type localhost. And then you can see we get this little website here. And this is basically what we see with these files inside the htdocs folder. This is basically what this is. So we don't really need to have this. So what I can do is I can go back inside our folder. Then I'm just going to delete all of the files that we have in here. Now, the important thing for you to know about this folder here is that this is going to be the place where you start creating your websites every time you want to create a new website inside this server here. So what we can do is we can go and create a new root folder. So I'm going to right click and say I want to create a new folder. I can call this one My Website, just to give it some kind of name. Of course, you're more than welcome to call whatever.
What I did on mine was I created website 1 so that you can do like 1, 2, 3, 4. That way you have multiple folders. You have it set up so you can do multiple things if you want.
The way you want it to be, but in my case, I'm just going to call it My Website. And now what you're going to notice is that inside the browser, I can go back inside and type localhost. And then you can see we get a list of all the different websites that I have inside this folder here. This means that if I were to create a second website, go in here, create a second one, My Second Website. Then you can see if I were to refresh in here, we now have a new website that you can open up using this server here. So if you were to click My Website, you can now see that we have this website open. So going inside your preferred editor, in my case, this is going to be Visual Studio Code. I'm going to go ahead and create my first file, which means that I'm going to save this file inside this folder that I just created. A very good advice for you is to go inside and actually dock the htdocs folder on the side over here so I have quick access to it. So what I can do is I can go
Now, I did not do this, so this is kind of up to you. I don't particularly need to do this, but if this is something you want to do, you can.
But go inside, find exam, take my htdocs folder and dock it over here on the side. So in this sort of way, I have quick access to it whenever I have to open my folders here. So I can click it, go in here. Let's just go and delete that second website since we don't actually need it. I'm going to go inside my root folder and create a index.php. Now, this is the moment where some people are going to get confused if it came directly from my HTML course, because when it comes to PHP, we want to make sure that instead of creating HTML files, we create a PHP file. The main difference here is that we actually allow for PHP to be run inside these files here. You can still write HTML just like you can before. So you don't need to freak out about your website breaking or anything like that, or not being able to write HTML inside these files just because it's called .php. And the same thing goes if you have an existing website that you want to convert into a PHP website. You can just take all the different HTML files that you have and just change the extension from HTML to PHP on those, and it's going to work inside your server. And it's not going to break anything, by the way. I should say that because some people do worry that it is going to break something, so I have to say it. With this file here, I'm going to save it. And then you can see we have this front page here. So if I were to go back inside my website, I can refresh my website. And then you can see we get a completely blank page. And that's because right now we have the index file running inside our server. Now, depending on the editor you're using, because in some cases the editor is just going to work straight away. But if you are using Visual Studio Code, it may ask you something that.
Yeah, mine freaked out, and then I clicked on the little box to open it. It brought up the file for me right away, but the way that he shows you, you can go do this too.
Cannot validate since a PHP installation could not be found. This is a very typical thing when you have a new version of Visual Studio Code. So if you have not set up PHP already inside this software, you are going to have to set it up manually inside this text editor here. So what you can do, if you were quick enough, is to make sure you opened up the little link it gave you. If not, then we're going to go up into File, go down to Preferences, go inside your settings. Then you're going to click on Extensions. Then you're going to go down to PHP. And from in here, you can actually set it to where you want to have the executable path set up inside a JSON file. So where to click this, you can now see that we have this one line called PHP dot.
And if you clicked the little warning, it'll automatically bring you to something that looks like this.
Validate dot executable path. And this is where we need to set in the link for our PHP installation, which is again inside the exam folder. So if we were to go back inside the exam folder, go back. You can see we have a folder in here called PHP. We're going to click it. And then you can see we have a php.exe file down here at the bottom. This is the one we need to link to inside this executable path inside Visual Studio Code. So what I can do is I can copy my path here, go back inside, paste it inside the double quotes, and then we're going to write \php.exe. Now, if you copied the path directly like I did here, you want to make sure these are not backslashes, but instead /. Otherwise, you're going to get an error message. And once you did this, you're just going to go ahead and save the file, and then you can close it down. And now we have it set up so that we can actually find the PHP version that we're using once we start creating a PHP website. So just to kind of test this out, let's go ahead and start up a regular HTML website. I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in for you so you can actually see what is going on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside body tags and create a pair of PHP tags, which we use in order to write PHP inside a website. So what I can do is I can write angle bracket, question mark, PHP, question mark, angle brackets. And then anything that goes in between here is going to be considered as PHP. So just to follow a very popular tradition here, let's go ahead and go inside and write echo, double quotes, hello, world, close it off with a semicolon, save it, go inside our website, refresh it, and then you can see we get hello, world. So with that, we now know that we have a.
That was an example of what's called a string. So that's
server running, so we can actually
basically just do that
code inside our website and have it display inside the browser. And with that, in the next video, I'm going to talk a bit about PHP syntax, so we can actually write PHP properly inside our website. So hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.
Okay, so hopefully that makes it a little bit easier for some of y'all. You stop sharing that screen. And let me bring you over to my, that's my JSON, not my PHP. There we go. So as you can see, I just have a blank index.php. So he was talking about doing an HTML website. Let's see. That's the nice thing about these. Right. And then you can just start working on your, oh, I didn't. That's a problem. There we go. That looks better. And then you can start working on it from there. And then you have to do your, this is one of the reasons I like Visual Studios, because it brings up your nice little suggestions. I'm not going to set the stuff in the head. I'm just going to put it there. Helps if you do the tags, right? And this is where he was talking about putting the, make sure that the, hold on one second. But yeah, you can see kind of what we're doing. Is everyone, do you have this open? Were you able to install? Is anyone awake? There we go. So what he was using was the HTML5. Let me go here.
I wasn't with you guys during the video. I was doing something else because I'd already done it. But did he get to the part where if you actually want to link it to the like your local host when you go online, so you can check your code, you've got to go into file settings. I think it's file settings.
Are you talking about the PHP or the set the PHP on there?
Yeah, to link it so that way it shows up like when you're actually looking at the web or when you open up a localhost website, you can see what you're coding for PHP.
I think so. That we just showed the end part where you make sure that it actually is linking the PHP together.
Yeah,
So
file preferences settings.
yep. Yeah, I
all right,
walked through that. Yeah, because that can be a pain, because if you don't have that on there, it doesn't see it there. So you can do HTML5, which is what it'll drop all this nice stuff in there. And then we have our, oh no, that's not where I meant to put it. There we go. And then within the body is where you can do the PHP code. Yep. So it's similar to the closing and open brackets. And just for viewability for me, I usually tab it in just so I can see it. So if you look at our assignment for this week, let me get to the right. We are on week 8. I was talking about operators. Excuse me. Different operators within PHP. So when you use this, you can actually test the operators and see if they work. So when you go in, let's see, video 7 has actual operators on there. So let's open that up and we'll go through it with you guys.
Let's talk a bit about operators inside PHP.
Because this guy has just really great executable. And when I'm talking about this, all I want to see is this section right here between where you have the question, the bracket question mark PHP, just that right there. You don't need to copy the whole page. So when you turn in your answers, I want 1, and then you just copy that chunk of PHP code. Does that make sense to you guys? Yes, we're asleep. Let's say yes. Here, I will go over and highlight and share on the other thing so I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. So this in between right here, that's all you need to put. You don't need to do this whole chunk. So when you answer those questions, just give me this little snippet right here. Okay, does that make more sense?
Can I show you mine and you can let me know
Oh,
whether or
yes.
not this would work?
Let me go right ahead. I'm on multi-share. Go for it.
All right. Where screen share, local host. There we go. Share. All right. So for like, I would basically just put this part for section 1.
Yes. Well,
All right.
you would need to put the end.
Well, like, yeah, so I did it all as one, so it shows up so like all this shows up because I wanted to be able to see it on the
Oh
local
my
host, so it
gosh,
all
look at
shows.
that.
Yeah, so it all should. This is all like I've done all of them, but number 6, but it all shows up under PHP, and like I can show you the page.
Yeah, let's see what that. Guys, do not copy his work, please. But
Local.
yeah,
But yeah, so like when I actually show it, this is what you should
okay,
see.
it's just you just put all of the answers. Yeah, no, with yours, just copy it. That would be just fine. If you want to put it, instead of putting it in little tiny snips on each one, if you want to do it like this, like Steve's got it, like it's each one is basically in between one big bracket, that's fine with me too. Just make sure you have the beginning and end brackets in there somewhere. But yeah, Steve, that would work fantastic. That's great. So just make sure you copy everything like that. That's great. Okay, so let's run through the video. And because he gets some really good explanations of what these are. Now, I tried to kind of stay with his video so that it would be easy for you guys, but there are also in chapters 4, 5, and 6, you can look for other examples of those operators, and it literally will list them out for you so you can see them there. So, okay. Let me expand this.
And operators is something used all the time whenever we do anything inside PHP. Now, essentially, a operator is something that helps us with logic, connecting data together, or math, or any sort of thing that has anything to do with operations inside code. And when it comes to operators, we have many different types, and I'm just going to cover the most essential ones that I know we're going to be using for the next couple of lessons. So we're not going to cover all the operators that exist out there. We will talk about the ones that you will be using most of the time. Operators is also something we'll have to learn a little bit about in order to actually do our projects in the upcoming videos, since we have to do that one calculator project that I promised, but we can't do it without.
And no, I'm not making you do a calculator project. I hate those. This is just, that's what he does in his. I just really like the way that he lists out the operators.
Talking about operators first, so we have to talk about how to do various kinds of operations. The first kind we're going to talk about is something called a string operator, and a string operator is a way for us to connect different strings or just different pieces of data together inside one string, so to speak. So essentially, let's say I have two different variables. I have variable A and I have variable B. And if I want to connect these two together, what we could do is we could create a variable C and say we want to set it equal to hello world, but I already have this data somewhere else. I already have it inside variable A and variable B. So what I could just do instead is I could connect these two together to create one string. So what I could do instead is I could actually go inside variable C, and instead of just rewriting everything again, because we already have the data, so there's no need to rewrite it, right? So what I can do is I can take variable A, and I can say I want to connect these two together by writing a punctuation, and then I can include variable B. So in this sort of sense, we can concatenate two pieces of data together by using this punctuation in order to say, well, I have this data, and I have this data, and I want to combine them using this punctuation here. I do also want to mention that you should be leaving spaces, so don't do this, but instead do this. And if we're to
Please note that thing about spaces and the period on there.
actually go ahead and echo this out, so if you go below here and say I want to echo out variable C, what I could do is just kind of take a look at how this looks like, because it's not going to look exactly like we think it is. If I refresh it, you can see we get hello world, because we concatenate these two together. But we don't have a space in between the words. So how do we create a spacing between two pieces of data? Well, the way we do that is by going in and say, well, okay, so I just concatenated two variables, but what if I want to concatenate a string together with this? So what I could do is I could, for example, say that I have a string and I want to create a space inside the string. And then, of course, we need to concatenate the string with variable B by creating a punctuation. So just like this, we now concatenated a string in between these two variables. So we created a small space here. So yes, this is a way to create spaces between data by just concatenating a empty double quote.
Isn't there a really
And
simple way to do what he's trying to do? And instead of doing that, you could have literally just put either a space at the beginning of world, up at the top, or at the next one above, in between the not parentheses,
At the words in between the
yes.
parentheses.
Well,
Yeah,
like you could have put a
can
space
do
at the end
that.
of hello or one at the beginning of world. And like
Yeah,
that's what
you
I did for
can do
mine. I
that.
was
He's
like,
just trying to be a little fancy and showing off how to throw spaces in there, I think.
back in, refresh it, and then you can see we get that little bit of spacing there. And this is just kind of like a really neat way to, connect two pieces of data together so we don't have to recreate it again, so we don't have to rewrite hello world inside a new variable. So we just use old data we have already and just combine it in here. And with this, we do also have something called arithmetic operators. So if we were to go in and paste that in and delete what we have already, a arithmetic operator is essentially math. It's just like we learned in elementary school. I think we learned this kind of math. So essentially like plus, minus, multiply, addition.
And while these are good examples, I don't want you to use the exact same examples when you turn your assignments in. So please try to change it up a little bit and make it your own. Yeah, that is kind of a pet peeve. I know that the first time I ran into math and programming together, it made me cry a little bit. So I totally get that.
We also have some other things like we do also have something called modulo and exponentiation. So we do also have some high school things added in here. But what I could do is I go in here and just simply echo out some data. So I could say 1 plus 2. And we're going to echo this out. Now, this is actually just a arithmetic operator that we add two numbers together like this did here. So in this case here, of course, we're going to save this and go inside our browser. So you can see we're gonna get 3 because 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. And in the same sense, we can do with all sorts of operators. So we can also go in and we can minus, we can also go in and multiply, we can also go in and divide if we want to do that. But we do also have this called modulo, which is essentially when we go in and we want to have the remainder of something specific. So in this case here, let's actually go and take 10 and say we want to divide by 3, or not divide, modulo by 3. Essentially what you're doing here is you're dividing 3 into 10, and when you can't do it any further, then you need to see how many numbers are left over in the end. 3, 6, 9, and then we can't do any more, right? But we got to 9.
Yeah, you don't need to get super like advanced with these. Like, let me stop share for a second. So for the arithmetic step operator, hold on, you can echo out, as far as I'm concerned. Don't do the 1 + 2 = 3, because that is literally what they just did. But do some things. Let me go back and share it with you. So just do some things. You can just do one line. These brackets, I think he goes over later. Brackets indicate that you should be doing that particular thing before. So that's this is enough. You don't need to be doing a huge ton of stuff. Like he's just kind of going over, this is all the different permutations, and I'm gonna fast forward here in just a second because he's getting a little bit in the weeds. Let me save this, and oh, I messed up on that one. Anyway, I'll have to go back and play with the, because I spaced that out. Yeah, well, I'll have to play with it, but because I'm on the fly. But anyway, when you get the red one, expecting and I can't see through my operator. Yeah, and if you want to do if else or you can do all sorts of things. You can do something super simple like you know, stuff like that. So you don't have to be as complicated as he makes it, is what is my point. And I made mine very mad, so I probably would just have to parentheses. Yeah, there's all sorts of things that you can do. You can get fancy. You can use super simple like
into 10. But we do also
that.
have this called
That's good enough.
Some
Let me get
called,
through.
no, that do so. So you can type the browser and we get calculated.
Oh, that's what I was trying to show you. So this is yeah, I forgot you can't put a number in front of it. Okay, so it's been a while since I've done math operators with the parentheses. So that type of thing, that's good enough. You don't have to go all the way out. There's an assignment operator, so here we go. Into that. Let me just make sure I'm actually doing the ones that we need, because there are a couple on here I didn't put in here. Okay, so just the basic, but I, play around with it so you can understand it is the whole point.
A is equal to 2. So in this case, I just assigned 2 to variable A.
It doesn't look like you're sharing the YouTube video right now.
Oh, shoot. Thank you. That's what happens when you have too many screens open. Let me back it up.
Things to
okay, you guys good now?
Which means that if we want to go in and say variable A is equal to 2. So in this case, I just assigned 2 to variable A. And it is important to note here that we do not say equal to 2, because there's a small difference between saying that it's equal to something or that we assign something to something. It's not really that important to know, but I just thought I'd mention that it's not equal to, it's that it gets assigned to, because variable A is the space in the memory. So if you assign a piece of data to that space in memory, then it's not the same as saying that it's equal to. Basically, we just assign data to to variable A. That's what you need to know. With that said, this is how we can assign a piece of data to a variable, which we have done plenty of times up until now. But let's say I want to do something a bit different. Let's say I do also want to say variable A is going to be equal to itself plus something else. What you could do is you would go in and say variable A plus 4. And this would actually work out. This is variable A, which is 2, plus 4, and then it gets assigned back to variable A, which means that now variable A is going to be equal to 6, right? However, this is extra code, and this is just not how we want to do things. We're essentially double writing variable A, which is not really considered best practice. So what we can do instead is we can just go ahead and delete and do something like this. So we can say plus equal to 4. So whenever we use any sort of arithmetic operator, which we talked about, which is plus, minus, multiply, divide, we could also do divide if we wanted to do that. But whenever we do something like this, we're essentially saying, go ahead and take variable A and set it equal to itself plus whatever is after the equal sign. So in this case, we would also still get 6. Then we would go and echo this out. So we're going to echo out variable A. Then you can see we get 6 inside the browser. And the same way, like I said, we can do with any sort of operator that we learned about previously, like minutes ago. So I could go ahead and say multiply. So in this case, it's 4 times 2. So we're going to go back in. You can see that we get 8. But now let's talk about the next operator type, which is something called a comparison operator. This is something that you will be using very often whenever it comes to any sort of conditions inside your code. We have talked a bit about conditions in the past. You know, when you have a if statement that says if this code is true, then run whatever code is inside this, like the code.
I think a lot of people refer to these as if then or if else. Gwen, you'll have to correct me on that. Didn't you say you used an if then on yours? Else if, thank you. Yes. It's just how it's written to do that. Yeah.
So to give an example here, let's go and delete what we have here, and let's go ahead and create a if statement. We haven't really talked about if statements in depth. We will get to do that, I believe, in the next video. But let's just go and create an if statement. Essentially, when we have an if statement like this with the if keyword, whatever's inside the parentheses has to be true in order for the code inside the curly brackets to run. But let's go and create a couple of variables here just to talk a bit about a comparison operator. So let's say we have variable A, and variable A has a piece of data assigned to it, which is 2. And I can also go ahead and say we have something called a variable B, which is going to have something like 4 assigned to it. Now, what I can do is I can go inside my parentheses here, and I can say, is variable A equal to variable B? What you'll notice is that I'm actually using 2 equal signs here, so I'm not using 1, because this means that we're assigning something to variable A. So A is going to be equal or be assigned to variable B. And that's not the same thing as doing 2 equal signs. When you do it like this, you're basically checking if 2 pieces of data are the same. And we're not really checking for data types here, just checking if they're the same. What I mean by that is if I were to actually, let's go and output something. So let's say if this is true, then echo out this statement is true, just to echo something out inside the browser. So if we were to do this, go back inside Firefox here, refresh it, you can see we get nothing so far. And that's because, of course, these are not equal to each other. 2 is not equal to 4. But let's say I went down and changed this to 2 and went back inside my browser. Now they're going to be equal to each other, right? Because 2 is equal to 2. However, if I go back in here and say, what if variable B is not a number? Well, let's say this is a string, like it's still 2, but now turned into a string. So is this going to be equal to each other? What is your guess? Because we're going to go in and find out now. It is still going to be true. And that is because we're not checking for data types in this case here. However, if I go back down to the equal signs and write a third equal sign, now we're checking for if they're true and if they're the same data type. So we're checking for 2 things now. Then we'll go back inside the browser, refresh it. You can now see, oh, it's not outputting anything. And that's because it's not true, because this right here.
So this is where you run into the, did I put too many of one thing in there? So make sure that you read through and make sure you have enough or not, or not enough of the various equal signs and semicolons and whatnot.
Is a string data type. Again, we can go.
Okay, so let me go forward on. Comparison, okay. I think logical is our next one. Yep, logical is the next one. Have a question? Oh, thanks for letting me know, Mike. Yeah, no problem. Just make sure you get your final done on Friday or before, tonight, for 255, okay?
And we go inside a if statement like this one down here. Let's say right now I'm checking is A equal to B, which in this case is going to be true because 4 is equal to 4. So we'll go back in and actually refresh. You can see that we get this statement is true. Now, let's say I want to check for more than just one condition. What you could do is you could copy paste a condition and put it inside another condition. And now all of a sudden we start doing something called nesting. Nesting is something that most people frown upon because it starts creating very messy code. I personally have done it in the past and I regret doing it because it looks extremely messy. But essentially you want to try to avoid having as many conditions inside other conditions as you can. Like in some cases you can't avoid it, but of course, if you can, then you should try not to. And one way we can do that is by going inside the original condition here and say, okay, so what if I want to check for something else as well? Let's say I have another pair of variables, and this one is going to be C, and this one is going to be D. And this one is going to be 2, and this one is going to be 6. What I can do is I can go inside my condition here and say, I want to check if this condition is true. So is A equal to B, which right now is true, right? So we output something inside the browser. But I also want to check is C equal to D. So what I can do is I can write and is variable C equal to variable D. So right now we're checking for 2 different things. So the first condition has to be true, but also because we wrote and, the second condition also has to be true. So both of these have to be true whenever you use and. So if we're to go and do this, go back inside the browser, refresh it, you can see, oh, we don't get any sort of output because one of them is not true. But let's say instead I don't want to check if they're both true, but I instead just want to check that one of them is true. What I can do instead is I can write something called or. So if I write or, we're basically saying this has to be true or this has to be true. And if one of them is true, then I'll put something inside the browser. So in this sort of way, you can use logical operators in order to, perform multiple.
So when he's talking about logical operators, he's actually talking about the and or stuff that's being thrown in there.
Conditions or multiple of logic inside the same condition. And it is possible to chain as many of these behind each other as you want. So you can also go ahead and say you want to check for a and then we can check is variable A equal to variable C. Then we can also do that and we can chain as many of these behind each other as you want. I do want to mention something here though, which is something you will see in most cases when it comes to people doing programming, which is that people don't really write or and. Because we do have another way of writing these, and even though this may not make sense to a lot of people why we choose to do this instead, that's just kind of like how people do it. Instead of writing or, what you can instead do is write 2 type symbols, and this means the exact same thing as writing or, and instead of writing and, we can use 2 ampersand symbols, and these 2 mean the exact same thing as or and. Now, the type symbol one is the reason why I think this is going to be a little bit annoying for most people because the type symbol is not really the easiest thing to figure out, whereas in the keyboard, I'm using a Nordic keyboard, which.
How you write that is up to you. You can write and, or you can use the pipes or the ampersand. Either way is fine by me. When you're beginning out, it seems like it's easier for most people to do the and, or just because it's easier for you to go over the top of it.
Means my layout is going to be different for Americans or other people around the world, and that is going to create or we're saying, oh, to check we want to. I can actually.
Okay, hold on, let me make sure. Yep, our very last one here. Incrementing and decrementing.
Can use them outside loops if we want to. I can actually demonstrate this. So if I were to go ahead and say variable A is going to be equal to 1. If I then go below here, I can also echo out variable A, just so we can see exactly what this looks like inside the browser. And then you can see we get 1, because variable A is equal to 1. However, we do have something called a incrementer, which means that I can go ahead and say variable A and add a plus plus in front of it, which means that we're adding 1 to variable A, which means that if we were to go inside the browser, we now get 2. So a incrementer is basically just a way for us to add 1 to a piece of data. And I can also go ahead and do a minus minus. In this case, I'm going to subtract 1. So we'll go back inside the browser. You can see that we're going to get 0. However, we do also have something called variable A plus plus, which is a little bit different because basically the order of when we add 1 to this variable here is going to be changed. So in this case here, what we had plus plus, we say that we add 1 to variable A and then we echo it out. Whereas if we were to go ahead and do plus plus after variable A, we want to say that we want to echo out variable A and then we want to add 1 to it. So we're going to do this. What do you think we're going to get inside the browser? We're going to get 1. So even though inside our code, this is going to be 2, we don't actually echo out 2 because we're adding 1 to it after we output it inside the browser. So we're going to go below here and actually say echo and say I want to echo variable A one more time. Then the second echo is actually going to be 2. And the same thing goes for minus minus, of course. We can also say minus minus, and then we're going to output A, which is going to be equal to 1. And then we're going to subtract 1 to it, which means that the second time we echo it out, it is going to be 0. So we're going to go back inside the browser and do this. You can see we get 1 and 0. And why does this matter? You might be asking. Well, in some cases, when we start talking about loops inside programming, and loops is something that we will get to talk about a little bit in the future, but essentially, a loop is a way for us to output the same code multiple times inside the browser, as long as a certain condition is still true. So let's say I want to loop out something until a certain number is lesser than 10. Then we're going to add 1 to the number that we're checking for every single loop. And then when we get to 10, then it's going to stop looping because now the number is not less than 10 anymore. Again, this may be a little bit confusing because we haven't talked about loops yet, so don't worry too much about it if you don't quite understand what I'm talking about here. I just want you to know that we have something called plus plus and minus minus. So if you want to add a number or subtract the number, you can do it by writing plus plus or minus minus. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this lesson here. We will get to talk a bit about conditions in the next video, which is something we have.
Wrong button. Okay, so you can do something super simple on the plus plus minus minus. Whatever, wherever you want to put it in there, just don't use the number 1. Change the number, do something else like that. Okay. Does that sort of help with this week's assignment? I'm pretty sure that Glenn's already got this a good handle on this. Okay. So, if you missed the first part, it's recording. You can always go back and rewatch it. And also that video, go in there and install XAMPP so that you can use it with it, and it makes a big difference. So that you can, like this one, you can go in and look at your website. And I have like here you can see I have a syntax error because I was playing with the stuff, and when I saved it, there was an error message. So actually, no, you can't because. Okay, so you can see that's what happens when you have something in there that you have an error message, which is nice because then it tells you, like on this one, says what line it's on, and it can say this is what I'm expecting. So that's kind of nice too, because then you can go, okay. Yeah, I know it's actually what I thought the first time I saw XAMPP with Winamp as well. But yeah, so this doesn't have to be as complicated as some people make it. So don't get so in the weeds on it that you make yourself have a brain bleed. Okay, guys. But yeah, what really helps is that XAMPP and using Visual Studio like that. It seems to be a nice way to help, so you can kind of play around with it a little bit easier. So, are there any questions on that? That is for this week. We were just talking about basic operators. And let me go back over to share this week's assignment. Okay, so variables and things like that and operators are basically what we were going over this week. But that I chose to go over the operators because I was out on Tuesday, and that will help you go through your assignment. So I highly suggest that you watch those videos. The chapters can be a little dry, but the nice thing about those, as I said, it'll give you some nice written out examples on things. Okay. So are there any questions before I stop and talk about homework? Yes, no, I think we're all good. Our brain hurts. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording right here.